So today we have a guest speaker. Our guest speaker is Mr. Bill DeLaney. His professional journey is full of what we call interesting twists and turns. After graduating from the University of Notre Dame in 1977, as many young, ambitious career professionals often do, he took a position with one of the major public accounting firms. He built upon that by attending and earning a postgraduate degree from the Wharton School of Business in 1982. Ultimately, that led him to Cisco, where he started in 1987 as the assistant treasurer at their corporate headquarters in Houston, and 4 years later was promoted to treasurer. For those that are not familiar with Cisco, you might have seen it on the side of trucks and wondering what that is. They're a global leader in selling, marketing, and distributing food products to essentially everywhere meals are prepared away from home in 90 different countries. With over 65,000 associates, nearly 300 distribution facilities, and more than 500,000 customers, they generated more than $55 billion in sales for fiscal year 2017. Mr. DeLaney then went on to test his waters in another industry for a couple years and then rejoined Cisco in Syracuse in 1996, where he started as that operating company's CFO and progressed to senior vice president and then executive vice president. In 2005, he moved to Cisco Charlotte as president and CEO. After 2 years there, he returned to Houston and was named the executive vice president and the CFO of the corporation. In 2009, he was appointed CEO for Cisco and served in that role until retirement in December of 2017. He continues to serve as an advisor and mentor to the current CEO. On a more personal note, Bill and his wife Debbie have been married for 38 years, and they have 3 children and 3 grandchildren. On that note, I'd like to introduce one of your fellow alums, Mr. Bill DeLaney.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Dale, and thank you, Gene, for inviting me here today. And good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here, and special thanks for the brave people that are, other than the corporate or the business development people that are sitting up here in the front row. Real quick word on Cisco. I'm not really going to do a Cisco presentation. We are the other Cisco. I say we. I did retire at the end of December. Spent 30 years with the company. Still somewhat involved working with Tom Benet, my successor, and our chairman, Jackie Ward, who is going to be stepping down here at the end of her term limit here in November. So I had a great 30-year run at Cisco. But when you think about that business, basically think about any meal eaten away from home. That is Cisco's potential customer. And so generally restaurants, but certainly colleges, universities, any type of travel event, any tourism. So basically, any meal eaten away from home is our space, and it's an industry that really experienced very rapid growth. Subsequent to Cisco's formation, the company was founded by a guy named John Baugh, very, very impressive man. He put together 9 companies in 1969. They went public in 1970. By the end of the 70s, they were doing about $1 billion in sales in parts of the country, parts of the U.S. When I joined in the 1987, we were doing about $3.5 billion. A few years later, I actually left for a period of time. We're about $10 billion, and today you heard they're pushing almost $60 billion. So it's been a great story with a really wonderful, fun industry, and it's where I've spent most of my business career, but not all of it. What I would like to do today is, first of all, encourage interaction and discussion and leave time for questions. And if you have something you just need to ask me when I'm talking, I probably can get you a microphone. But I'll try to be tight, and I'll try to be thorough, and I'll try to keep moving. When you talk to a group this big, and I've never really given this talk before, and certainly not to this audience, I have some sense, certainly for Notre Dame, but I went to a very different Notre Dame than what Notre Dame is today. I'm sure there's some commonality, and we'll talk about that. But I know the people in this room are very, very accomplished in terms of what you've succeeded in life in to date. So it's a real privilege for me to be here. It's great to be back at the school. It's a privilege to come back to the business school and be able to speak to this group. And I'm looking forward to that. I think for you, though, maybe, and what I would like is I'm going to tell a little bit about my story to try to connect in a way, at least on some points that might resonate with you as you look forward in your career. We're at different points in our careers. I'm 62. I just stepped down from a pretty big job from a company I spent 30 years at. And I'm doing some board work and doing a little more family thing. I'm still kind of sorting all that out. You're in the early stages of your career. And so my hope would be is by taking you through my journey and focus on a couple things in particular, that it might help you as you make some decisions, continue to make decisions on all the opportunities that you're going to have going forward. The journey today, I'll try to keep it at a pretty high level. Anybody here from upstate New York or central New York? Anybody know where it is? Okay, it's the part of New York that nobody really knows about. So I grew up in a town called Skaneateles. It's the pinky of the Finger Lakes. It's about 20 miles southwest of Syracuse and about 60 miles east of Rochester. Beautiful place to grow up, and small town. It's still a small town. It's a little bit more commercialized today than it was, but my grandparents were from there. My parents were from there. What I would call a very, very normal childhood, very safe, very secure. And it was just a small town. And, I was born obviously in the 50s, but grew up in the 60s and the 70s. Syracuse University, obviously nearby. My father would take us in there for football games quite a bit. And that was a time when their football teams were good, but Vietnam was raging. And so for a kid from a little small town, you go into Syracuse University on a football weekend, and you're Larry Zonka and Floyd Little, and I realize those names may not mean a lot to everybody in this room, but then you got all these demonstrators for the Vietnam War, and that really made an impression on me in terms of just the difference between growing up in a small town and being in a more university setting orientation or a large city. So I saw a little bit of that, but basically small town living, very close family, pretty extended family. My dad was in the road construction business. His father, my grandfather, was in the same business. Hard work, good work. He's very, very good at it. Was very good at it. My mom was a school teacher, retired when they got married, and I have 4 brothers and sisters. And my brother Joe, followed my dad in the construction work. I tried it summers. I wasn't very good at it. It actually gave me great motivation to continue to work hard in school because it's hard work. And but we were building roads and bridges, and my brothers carried on in that and done a really good job. My brother Michael is actually a Holy Cross priest, and he's actually stationed here at Notre Dame right now. And for those of you who are looking to find a little more broadening of your experiences in life, he oversees all the mission work for Holy Cross. And he spent 8 or 9 years down in Chile before he came back for this job. He ran Notre Dame High School for several years. He spent a lot of his career at University of Portland, including running their year abroad program in Salzburg for a couple of years. So I get back a little bit more now. I was talking to Gene earlier. I haven't gotten back a lot over the years, just because of work and family and that kind of thing. But Michael's here, and was hoping to see him tonight, but that's not going to work out. But in any event, he does a great job here, and he was ordained here, but this is really the first time in his career that he's been stationed here. I have 2 sisters, Pat and Kate, and my sister Pat's a nurse in central New York, and my sister Kate's in the brokerage business up in Connecticut. So we had a very close family, and as I look back on that family in that small town, I think it was a huge advantage for me growing up. It was allowed us to grow up a little slower, I think, at a time when there's a lot going on in the country, kind of like there is now in a different way, and allowed me to kind of mature at a pace that was probably good for my personality. I will tell you, as idyllic as that town was and as great as it was, there was one event toward, as we got older, my father died. My father was killed in a plane crash when I was in high school. So I was 16, and my mom ended up with 5 teenage children, basically, at 40, in her mid-40s. And I tell you that not to appeal for sympathy or anything like that, but it's an example, I think, of you have a life and you have a path, and you need to continue to work that path. And but you also need, I think, to be ready to deal with things that come up, whether it's family or some type of outside event that you're not planning for. Hopefully it won't be as dramatic or tragic as that, but I think we all know, you've all been on this earth long enough to know that things happen, stuff happens in life. And that changed our family dramatically. You can just think of your father when you're in your teens and just, may not say a lot, but how important that person is in the family in terms of strength and just stability. And I would tell you, it changed me dramatically, because all of a sudden, this big crutch that I didn't realize I was really relying on was gone. Now, we were fortunate. My dad had saved some money. There was life insurance. My mom went back to work as a substitute teacher. So we all went to college. We all went to good colleges, and we all got our education. But that event, I would tell you, is tragic, and as hard as it is even to talk about today, shaped my life significantly, and those of my brothers and sisters, and certainly my mother. I think I spent the next 15 years probably trying to do as good as I possibly could do, certainly for me, whether it was in school or at work or whatever, but for my father, and to try to show my father wherever he was, or however he was looking down, to make him proud of me and our family and what we were able to accomplish. I probably spent the rest of my life beginning as an adult to appreciate what my mother had done. And these 5 teenage children, 12 through 16, no husband at a time, and really she never remarried, to get us through school, to get us through life with all the bumps and bruises that we all go through. And then as I became a parent, and now a grandparent, to understand how difficult that must have been for her. And I tell you that just from the standpoint, we're going to talk about business today, and we're going to talk about career. And it's important. I mean, I worked hard in school. I worked hard here at Notre Dame. I did well. I wasn't the best, but I did well enough. And I've always worked hard. I've worked hard in my jobs and in career. But don't confuse what we do here, with life. It's a big part of your life, and it's a big part of who you are and what you will continue to grow into. But don't let it define you. Life is so much bigger than that. And I just would encourage you to continue to embrace your family. If you've got some unresolved issues with family, try to take care of those over time. Cultivate, not a lot, but try to cultivate really true, genuine friendships, people that you can rely on and people that can rely on you. Those are 2 critical things, I think, for me. Take care of your health. You're young and you're fit. Hopefully, continue to take care of your health. And also, I think, and I think this is a big part of Notre Dame, take care of the people that maybe can't take care of themselves as well as we can. So I think as you look forward, all this that's ahead of you is so exciting, and I'm very excited for you. But kind of always remember where you came from, and remember who helped you get to where you are, and who's going to continue to help to get you there. I'm married. I met my wife, Debbie, here actually in 1975. And I would just say on that, I've been going through a lot of retirement speeches last year. I was fortunate where I grew up. I was fortunate for the family that I have, my parents. And I'm very, very fortunate that I met my wife actually here at Notre Dame. So luck plays a part. Now, you got to take advantage of the luck when you have it. And I would just tell you, for me, another big advantage for me going through life is there's a lot of ups and downs. All right, you've experienced some of them already, but you're going to have more. Hopefully you have more ups than you will downs. But to have a partner who's there to support you and who you can trust, and who's there, frankly, when you're having the downs, to reinforce, all the good about you and all the positives and all the things that you have to bring. If you can find that person, or if you want to find that person, take your time, find the right one, and it's invaluable doesn't begin to describe it. To have that kind of friend and partner through your entire life, career, raising children if you decide to have children, just a tremendous blessing for me, and she's been huge for me and for our kids, and today for our grandkids. We have 3 children, all adults now, all adopted. We were very fortunate to be able to adopt. We couldn't have children ourselves, and they're not here today, but they've been in Notre Dame, and they didn't go to school here, but we've been back in different ways. And again, with my brother here, there's a big Notre Dame connection. And I would just say that I'm very, very proud of them. And if you decide that you want to be a parent at some point, I don't think there's anything more rewarding or anything more challenging that you can possibly do. But you will grow more as a parent, as a person, than anything else that you do. So that's kind of the personal side of it for me. Until we get to the Q&A, and I'll take whatever you want. I think on the professional journey, I'll hit some high points, and then we'll talk about my Notre Dame experience a little bit, and then get into maybe some more substantive things, which I hope are substantive and helpful to you. As far as the career part of it, came here to college, and I will go back and talk about that. Needed a job, obviously, when I got out. Went to work for what was then Ernst & Ernst. Loved Notre Dame, had a great experience here, but quite honestly, I was ready to leave, after 4 years. So a lot of the jobs with the public accounting firms were coming out of Chicago. I had opportunities to do that. A lot of kids, probably a lot of you here, from Chicago, moved back to Chicago. I was really looking for a different experience, and was very fortunate to get with Ernst & Ernst, what was then Ernst & Ernst up in Boston. Spent 3 years there, went back to grad school, moved to Philadelphia, got married, did all the things you're not supposed to do in 1980. Went back to school, got married, moved, I taught part-time at Wharton on the undergrad side. Debbie got a job, about 5 big moving parts, all in the span of 2 or 3 months. Moved into West Philadelphia, married housing at University of Pennsylvania, paying $450 a month, which was a lot back then for plastic furniture. Found out about a month later from a classmate of mine who came from California, went to a party down their place in Center City, and he's living in a 3-bedroom place with a baby, paying less for a beautiful place in Philadelphia. So that was the last time I ever made a real estate decision in our family. Debbie's bought every home and picked every neighborhood we've ever lived in since then. Good experience at Wharton, very different than Notre Dame, more of a work experience, more of a business experience, but very, very fortunate to have gone there. Obviously it's been a big advantage for me, professionally in terms of credentials and that kind of thing. Went from Wharton to Houston, which was a big deal back then. It was 1982, didn't know it at the time. The energy crisis was just, the real energy crisis was just getting ready to start. Went with a company called Cameron Iron Works, billion-dollar international company. CEO is a Wharton guy, CFO is a Wharton guy, hired 6 of us, and we went down there, and within 3 months, their 3-year backlog, they made blowout preventers, global company, blowout preventers, valves around the world, gate valves, ball valves. Within 3 months, their 3-year backlog of product, a 3-year backlog had gone to 3 months. That's how precipitous the decline was. Very fortunate there. It was historically a sales and engineering company. I was a finance guy. They needed finance guys at that point in time. So I was there 5 years and then found Cisco and went over there, as you heard from Dale, as an assistant treasurer. Went into Cisco right at a time where it had been around for about 15, 17 years. It was one of the top 2 or 3 in its industry, but the industry was in its infancy. And really went there just because we just adopted Kristen, and I really needed to get a raise, quite honestly, to keep providing, for the family. And all they were looking for was bench strength. Then we did a big acquisition the next year, bought a company called CFS out of Chicago. It was the number 3 player, and all of a sudden everything became bigger. All right, all of a sudden we did borrow, and we financed and we refinanced, and the investor relations was a bigger deal. The insurance was a bigger deal. The pension plans, the retirement plans were bigger deals. Insurance, and all of a sudden I'm sitting here as an assistant treasurer, and I got to work on all of that. I wasn't the lead guy, but all of a sudden I was there. So call that luck, call that what you will, but what I would tell you is the opportunity came, and you're going to get those kind of opportunities. You just don't know exactly when they're going to come or where they're going to come. But I got it. I was prepared for it. And with a lot of help from a lot of people, I was able to do a really good job with it. And I was in a good place. I was in a company that I really respected, and I was in a job that I was trained to do. So always look forward. You want to focus on your career and your own journey, but don't get too locked in on what it's going to be 3 years from now or 5 years from now, because opportunities are going to come along, and you want to have the flexibility and have had the preparation to take advantage of those opportunities. So I did that for 7 or 8 years. Company grew dramatically, multiple stock splits. It was just a great time to be in Cisco. And then approaching 40, getting a little bored, quite honestly. I probably didn't fully appreciate what I had at that time, where I was, and had an itch. And I actually left Cisco and went into another company, similar industry but different. And guess what? It wasn't Cisco. And I probably moved a little too quick, and I probably could have thought it out better. But the leaving wasn't a mistake, because I think I'd kind of gotten to a point where I could. At Cisco, I was treasurer by then, and a vice president. They were going to promote me to senior vice president, but I was also making a lot of money on a relative basis. And but I wasn't even 40 yet, and I could kind of see I was going to get blocked or plateaued out, but maybe trapped too, because I'd be making a certain level of money, big bonuses, but maybe could see that at some point not as fulfilling as I would like it to be. So I went out and took the CFO job in this company, and I will tell you this, it was the most challenging experience. I've had a couple of really challenging experiences professionally, but this was the first and most challenging experience, because all of a sudden I'm in this environment with a lot of good people. There's good people everywhere. People want to work. They want to follow you. They want to do good things. But this was a company, as it turned out, that the strategy and the vision was a little ahead of its ability to execute. And that can happen sometimes when you have a charismatic CEO and a balance sheet that's maybe not as robust as you'd like it to be. All right, so I got into that situation, public company, CFO, CEO, and really struggled with my ability to be an enthusiastic advocate for where that company was going and how fast they were going to get there. You probably can appreciate that creates a little bit of challenged with a CEO who's out there with this unbelievable strategy. So long story short, very difficult. Nothing wrong with the company, nothing ethically wrong with the company. It was just different than what I was used to, and I was having a hard time seeing how we were going to execute it. And I'm out on the front lines, basically, as a CFO, trying to be an advocate for that strategy. We got some things done. We got a big acquisition done. We did some financing, and then I decided to leave, and we worked through that. So I didn't stay there very long. I was there a little over a year. But I will tell you, I came out of that experience. This is going to sound backwards. I came out of that experience. You could call it a failure. You could call it a setback. You could call it a learning experience. I came out of that experience with more confidence than anything I'd ever done to that point, because I wasn't riding the Cisco cube. I wasn't, Cisco brings along a lot of people. It's a big company. It's a great company, great ethical company with a lot of integrity. Not a perfect company, but all of a sudden I'm in this situation. I don't have any mentors around me. I don't have a lot of people telling me where to go, and I'm kind of on this island. And somehow I was able to navigate through some of these really hard decisions, business-wise, but maybe more personally, in terms of where I was going to draw a line on certain things and how far I was going to go. I'll tell you one little learning from that, just keep in the back of your mind. Go out and make all the money you can make, all right? And figure out what you're going to do with it. Give it away if you want, spend it if you want. Try not to get yourself in a situation where you can't leave a job or you can't leave a situation because of the financial side. Don't put yourself in a position, if you can possibly help it, where you have to stay someplace because of the money. Because that will make some of the harder decisions, the more subjective decisions on whether it's the right place for you, whether the culture is right, whether the values are right. So just kind of file that away for when that comes up. But just always have something aside. Keep your network going. I've never been a great networker, but don't find yourself saying, well, I'm staying here and I'm going to put up with this, or I'm going to be miserable. Maybe it's more on me than in the company because I need the money. Don't allow that. That's backwards thinking. But you got to manage that a little bit ahead of time. So then back to Cisco, got lucky, and two things happened. And I just want to bring the family back. We now have 3 kids. I will euphemistically describe them as high maintenance kids at that point. Love them to death. Couldn't imagine life without them. I think we discovered ADHD, ADD, and dyslexia. Each of them had a little bit of that going on. So the maintenance, my wife Debbie was doing all the maintenance. So we basically said, you know what, I've had my little fling. I tried this deal. It didn't work out. We're moving home. So we actually moved back up to that little town of Skaneateles where I grew up. And I was fortunate enough to come back to Cisco and worked at Cisco Syracuse there. I came in as the CFO. I'd never been in an operating company before. Was there 8.5 years, kind of moved up and learned the business. And it was a small enough company that I was able to learn the warehousing and the operations and the distribution side, the merchandising, even though initially I was more on the finance side. And then over time got broadened out and took on more responsibility there. Thought we'd be there for the rest of our lives. Great place to live, great place to raise kids. My mom was still alive. A couple of my brothers and sisters were there. Kids did pretty well. But then after 8 or 9 years, started to get a little bored again and had an opportunity to go to Charlotte and went down to Cisco Charlotte. Totally different market, blowing and going, big growth. We weren't the #1 player in that market like we are in most markets. Big move for our family, nervous about that. Oldest son was in high school, turned out to be the best thing that could have happened for him. Our youngest son, Michael, who's dyslexic, that's actually where he got diagnosed. So went to Charlotte, got to lead a company, lead a highly successful company that was a very sales-oriented company. I'm a finance guy by training, and I'm from Syracuse. I'm the #2 guy in Syracuse, and they're sending me to Charlotte. So a little bit of a different kind of transition experience where I'm down there. No one knows why I'm there, because the guy that just went back to corporate, Bob Davis, he's this charismatic sales leader, and they bring me in. But it was a wonderful time for me to learn how to lead and to be the point person on leadership in that company, but also to build a team. That company had tremendous individual leaders, but it had been growing so fast that we needed to develop a team and get some succession planning going. And I thought I'd be there a really long time. It turned out I was only there 2 years. But that's really what I did. I worked a lot with the district sales managers and the other frontline supervisors. Back to corporate, I'll speed this up. Why did I go back to corporate? They brought me back to be CFO. I didn't go back to be CFO at that point. I mean, that was the job. And I would have loved to maybe had that opportunity when I was 38 years old. It wasn't going to happen. I was fine with that. But when I went back because Cisco was going through a lot of change. We'd had this very vertical growth, and we were the leader and the fastest growing in an industry that was growing very fast. And all of a sudden, the rate of that growth of the industry was slowing down. So I went back in 2007, You may have read about 2008 and 2009 financial collapse. Cisco's been around almost 50 years. 2009 is the only down year they've ever had. I mean, everything went down. Some places just imploded. And so I went back because I knew the world was changing, the business climate was changing, and Cisco needed to change. It was starting to change, but it was really a bumpy start. So the way, by then I was wired, I can't tell you I was wired that way when I was your age sitting in an audience like this. We didn't have a lot of these audiences. But the way I was wired at that point is I wanted to be at that proverbial table when the big decisions were being made. I didn't necessarily want to be at the head of the table at that point. I never really aspired to be a CEO per se. I wanted, to do good work. But I wanted to be at that table, and I wanted my input to be heard. Because I had a lot of input by then. I'd worked in the field. I'd worked in 2 different markets. I'd worked at corporate. And I'd met the founders and all the original leaders of Cisco. So I had strong views at a time when this company's going through a lot. So I went back. They pay me a little more money too, so I don't want to totally discount that. But that's the real reason I went back. And then another thing happened. So the thing with my dad was kind of this unanticipated event, if you want to call it, personal. Then this other thing happened where the CEO retired much sooner than anybody thought he would. So I'm back. I haven't been back 2 years. And all of a sudden, Rick Schneers is going to retire, and they need a new CEO at a time when we're starting to build all this big strategic change, transformative change. The world's kind of going through a lot of shock, and they don't exactly have what I would characterize as a big bench at that point in time. So we went through a process, and here I am 2 years out of Charlotte, 4 years out of Warner's, New York, a little hamlet outside of Camillus, which is a little town outside of Syracuse. Okay, I get the job. And I could not even imagine that 5 years before that. You might meet people who say, yeah, we knew you would, balderdash. There was no way I ever thought I was going to be CEO of Cisco, and I certainly didn't think it would happen that fast. So we'll come back and talk about that a little bit more, but the point is this. Once they came to me, I was surprised, not shocked. Talked to Debbie. It was a big deal. And the way I explained to her, I said, look, this is what this is going to be like. I want to do it because it's an unbelievable opportunity. I love this company. I know we're going through a lot of change. I have a point of view on how I would like that to do, how I would like that to play out. But this is going to be like being an NBA basketball coach, all right? If we don't get off to a good start, it may not last for long, and there's no place to go. There's no place for them to put you after you've been the CEO. When you're working in Cisco Syracuse, if you kind of flame out as a sales guy or something, we can put you in the beverage department, all right? We can put you, out in operations or something. But when you don't make it as a CEO, you're pretty much done. And so we went into it with our eyes open. And I'll come back and talk about that on the leadership part of the presentation. So that's kind of the chronological story for me. And I think if you take anything out of that, it's you should feel really, really good about where you are today and about what your opportunities are going ahead. Continue to work on your craft. Continue to work on yourself as a person. And continue to be ready for the unanticipated and to make sure that you're able to take advantage of that opportunity when it comes. Notre Dame experience, I'm just going to give you this for context. It was a long time ago. I know I'm looking at these faces here, so maybe your parents or grandparents would recognize it. My first experience at Notre Dame was coming home from church on Sunday morning, turning on the TV, and watching the Notre Dame highlights. It was like an hour show, and there was this guy named Lindsey Nelson. We go to further action in the third quarter. So I was aware of the school, knowing my family had never gone to the school, but it was basically from watching the football on Sunday mornings. And then I figured this out last night going through. My first time at Notre Dame was 50 years ago this weekend. And my dad got 4 tickets. There were 7 of us. My dad got 4 tickets from a guy he worked with, and we got in our station wagon on a Thursday afternoon. We drove to Painesville, Ohio. I still remember this. Stayed in a hotel because that was a big deal for us back then. And then we drove into South Bend on Friday, and we went to the pep rally at the old field house. I don't even know if it exists anymore. But we were playing Oklahoma, and they hung the Oklahoma quarterback in effigy. But they actually brought back, believe it or not, they brought back Pat O'Brien. And you may have seen that New Rockne All-American thing over in the annals. They had Pat O'Brien come back and do the Newt Rockne winner for the Gipper speech. So that's still 50 years ago. That's my first. So there's something happened that night. It doesn't make any sense, but it was a pretty captivating evening. We had 7 tickets or 4 tickets, so my dad basically, 3 of us saw half the game, the other 3 saw the other half. My dad got to see the whole game. That's it, okay? Fast forward, my uncle Tom, who's a diocesan priest, brought me out here for an interview in the fall of my senior year. He stayed at the old Morrison. I stayed on the floor in a room in Dillon. Went over, did the interview. They must have taken pity on me. My SATs were okay, but not great at that point. The second round were better, but they asked me one question, is Notre Dame your first choice? I said yes, I got in. And so I still remember getting that letter. In December, I applied, early decision, and I will tell you, meeting my wife, having children, and being accepted to Notre Dame, probably at that point, first 25 years, just the most pivotal in terms of where my life went after that. So I was so excited to come out here. Had no idea what I was coming out to. I was 17 years old. So we come out, enroll, first year class. My mother and another uncle and aunt brought me out. Kind of an emotional day that first day when my mother was leaving, and then just had a tremendous experience out here on every level. It was a different place back then. I mean, the bookstore was actually a bookstore back then. I mean, you actually went there. It was at a different place. You'd go there just to buy books for the most part. Women had been admitted, I think, 2 years before I got here, and there weren't very many women, and the ones who were here were really, really smart. So any class with a curve, they dominated the A, B plus deal, and the rest of us were kind of scrambling for what we could get. So women were there, but nowhere near as the proportions that you have here today. A little bit on sports. I love sports. I mean, so Parsegian was the coach for the first couple of years. They won a national championship. They beat Alabama in the national championship game my freshman year. They beat them the next year, I think, in an Orange Bowl game. 1 point and 2 points. He retired. Divine came in. So great time to be here for the football. Digger Phelps was an up-and-coming basketball coach. He had a tremendous year my first year here. Again, these names may not resonate, but Adrian Dantley, Shoemate, people like that, they won a lot of games, and Digger was off to a very, very fast start. So that's kind of the timeline of it. In terms of, for me personally, as I look back, certainly the Notre Dame brand, something that you're going to benefit from and something that you continue to build for this university. I mean, Aaron and I were talking about the SAT scores. I can't relate to the SAT scores in this school right now, and even with a little inflation. I have to hope that there's been some inflation, but it's amazing that the talent that we have in this school and what we have in this room. And so I was able to get a great education and benefit from the brand in terms of getting the job and then down the road. There's no doubt in my mind that it helped me get into Wharton. It didn't help me get into Harvard. I didn't get into Harvard, but it helped me get into Wharton. There's no doubt in my mind when they came around to make that decision on CEO at Cisco, that board didn't really know me very well at that point in time. And there's no doubt in my mind that even though the leaders in Cisco knew me, and I was very well known in the field and the corporate, and that was hopefully the bigger thing that helped, that Wharton degree was really, really important. Well, there's no Wharton degree without a Notre Dame degree. I'm pretty confident of that. And so it all kind of helped. But what I would tell you is more substantively, day in and day out, I think what Notre Dame did for me is it gave me confidence. It didn't give me confidence, it allowed me to build confidence. That's another thing. I'm going to go back and forth like on kids. There's 2 things I've learned in life, okay, only 2, that I can't change, or at least I won't try to change. If you ever get out there and you start doing M&A work or business development, it's really, really hard, I find impossible, to get someone to sell you their company, family company, if they don't want to do it. The other thing that's a little more personal is it's really, really hard to give your kids confidence. Confidence is something you have to go out and earn and build yourself, and you do it with some wins and some losses. But I came out of here confident. You've heard me say that a couple times. I came out of a very good experience confident, more confident. I came out of a bad experience more confident, and that's just life. So I think the confidence is a really big part. But also, as I'm kind of in my more reflective years, I would reiterate something I said earlier. I think looking back on Notre Dame, even though I don't get back here a lot, I get back here a little more now, I think what Notre Dame really did for me was reinforce the values that I was raised with. That town that I talked to you about, those parents I talked to you about, that extended family. And I think there's still a lot of that here in this school today. And I think sometimes as you go forward, you might just take a pause when you can. It's hard. I think you're going to see you get a lot more out of this school than just the degree and the education and the brand. And I'm sure you're smart enough to know that, but I'll be honest with you, life goes by pretty fast. And I've probably come to that epiphany a little bit more here in my later years. So that was the Notre Dame experience. And my experience at Notre Dame is I try to get back when I can to a game or two, bring my kids or grandkids, and and see my brother. And then these business development guys find me every time I get close to the campus as well. Pivot here a little bit. I'll go through this kind of quick. I just want to touch the success, failure, and happiness thing. That's a little more of a tease. I don't pretend to have answers for that for you, but I will tell you, in the last 10 or 12 years, I've had more leadership positions, whether it's within Cisco or other groups. I give a lot of talks. It might just be small groups. It could be one-on-one. It could be on an airplane talking to somebody. And often people will say, well, you're a CEO or CFO, or how did you get to be successful? How did you deal with failure? How do you balance your work life so that you're happy? Okay, here's what I'm going to tell you. That you've already had a lot of success. Success is kind of like sports. Actually, I was a manager my first year out here, and I would hear Digger Phelps say this all the time. I don't know if he said streak time or spurt time, but when you're on a roll, run. It's like a wave. Just go hard and when it's good, just keep it going. So when you're having success, let it build on itself. All right, and make sure you continue to drive for even more. But don't take it for granted, because not every day is going to be a great day. And so stay humble. People like you better when you're humble. Okay, and you're going to like yourself over time a little bit better when you're humble. And the more you do, and the more you accomplish, and the more you fail, the more humble you're going to be. You're going to be humbled a lot. But that's okay, because that's how you grow. Failure is just life, okay? There's a lot of, again, you've had failure, I'm sure. You'll have more. People like to talk about making it, fail fast. I like to fail small. Fail early, fail small, fail fast, I guess works. But make sure, it's harder, as you get older and you get a little more secure in yourself. I'm not going to say you have to embrace failure, but I think you need to acknowledge it. But you need to define it, just like success. Success, each of you is going to define success differently. There's no one formula for success. You can quantify certain things. There's your business life, your academic life, your personal life, your family life. Failure is kind of the same thing. But the key is when you do have a misstep or you do fall back, whether it's a personal shortcoming or a professional loss or just a defeat, just acknowledge it. Or you can learn a lot from it. Turn it into a success down the road. Some people say if you don't fail at all, you're not trying hard enough. Or you're not taking enough risk maybe. Probably I would buy into that to some point. But you kind of got to know who you are and where you are in your life. So we'll talk about risk here in a minute. But I also think there's more reasons why I see people fail. Sometimes they fail because the other person's better or the other team is better. That's okay. All right, we see that every week in sports. Sometimes they fail because they didn't try hard enough. That's not always politically correct to say, but sometimes people are just maybe not going through the motions, but they're really not putting everything they have into it. I'm sure that doesn't happen a lot here, but it can happen. I think there's another reason people fail sometimes or don't succeed as much as they would like, and this is a little boring, but I really believe it's true, and I really think it's what separates a lot of leaders and a lot of achievers who are all pretty even in terms of their skill sets. Preparation. Preparation is so important, because when you get to a certain level of responsibility or you get to a certain level of competition, everybody's about the same. Everybody you're going up against is the same. So it really comes down to the leadership and your ability to prepare and to prepare your team to go forward, with a very clear message and clarity on the values, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that starts with preparation. It starts with having a plan and executing that plan, and you can't take anything for granted. So all I'm saying is when you do fail, acknowledge it, learn from it, and then move on. Put it behind you and move on. Happiness, I'm not even going to try to tackle happiness. I've been around a lot of people who are only happy when they're miserable. All right, so again, I think happiness is a very individual thing. I think it's a choice. I think some people are a lot better than others. I'm not the greatest at saying whatever their situation is, whatever environment they're in, they're going to choose to be happy, or at least positive. Positivity. It's a word I hadn't heard of till about 5 years ago. Now you hear it all the time. Positivity. So that's a huge advantage, as is likability. But I think on happiness, what I'm going to share with you for today is work is work. They call it work, it's work. All right, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't strive for success and for fulfillment, and we're going to talk about that on the purpose slide. But it's work, and I can tell you for me personally, and I'm not saying this as you, when I think of the most happy moments of my life, joy, or the saddest moments of my life, they weren't about work. They were about family. They were about my children, about my grandchildren, my parents. My older son, Matt, got married last summer. There was a picture of me in a golf cart at the reception with my kids and my grandkids, and the smile on my face. I don't smile a lot, and I smile more now that I'm retired. But I don't think I've ever seen myself that happy before, and that was just a great event with my family. So I keep coming back to that, but that's kind of where I look for happiness. But that's going to take us to purpose, and that's really kind of where I think we can connect the dots. And the way I look at purpose is if you can periodically take stock of where you are relative to where you want to be in your life and what your goals are, personal, professional, and otherwise, I think that will kind of force you may not call purpose, to start to think about what's important to you and what are your priorities and what's your timeline to get there. I will admit to you, I really didn't start thinking about the word purpose too much until I came back to Cisco, and the CEO at the time handed us a book on purpose. It seemed a little backwards to me because by then he'd already outlined a strategy and a vision and a mission, and so now we got to go find purpose. So when I got my shot in the chair, we didn't really talk about purpose that much. We talked about vision and we talked about values, and we'll come back to that. But I thought about more and more about it as I retired and started to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, and then and more and more when I thought about this talk, because what I found, and this may be where you are, it may not be, is I think we're always looking for purpose, but when we're young and we're moving along really fast, we just find it. Okay, we find it in our schoolwork, we find it on the athletic field, we find it in our community service. And it just kind of happens naturally because those opportunities, and we're still growing, and that learning curve is so vertical. If we're in a good place, there's plenty of purpose, maybe too much purpose. I think as you hit your older years, then you have to start kind of, you make some choices and you make trade-offs and you try to make them as well as you can. And it kind of comes down to this family work thing, and some people are able to do a lot more. I'm basically two-dimensional. I've always basically just tried to balance the two. But what I would tell you as I look back now, I think there's several components as I think about it. And please, I'm not going to publish this, and I'm not going to write a book or anything, but these are just 5 things I think they're continuous. All right, and some happen more early in your life and some later in your life. But I think to really position yourself to find purpose, if that's what you want, and if you are continuing looking for purpose and you get there, that will set you up for success. That will allow you to handle adversity and failure better than if you don't have some context. And that will position you to be more happy than not, if that's really what's important to you personally and certainly professionally. So growing and learning, all I'm talking about there, it's obvious, right? You're all at that stage of your life, you're all growing physically and mentally and emotionally. Some are a little older than others, but that stage goes on for a long time. The learning part, clearly, all kinds of academic learning, but I'm talking a little bit more than that. How do we learn how to work with other people? How do we learn how to work in teams? How do we learn how to work with people we really don't like, but they're talented and they're not evil? Okay, we just don't click, but they're important to the team. How do we learn to do that? How do we learn to deal with adversity? All right, how do we learn to strike the right balance between work and family, or work and personal life, whatever that may be for you, and how do we kind of recalibrate that periodically? So it's learning, but it's a broad type of learning, and it's continuous. I think the day you stop learning, the day you stop trying to grow, is the day when you're going to struggle to find real purpose in your life. So don't. Compete and improve. I loved sports growing up. Unfortunately, I kind of peaked as an athlete in 6th grade. So after that, I played a little bit of baseball, but it was mostly sports writing and following sports and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I was a student and I worked hard for my grades, and I went to work and I wanted to get good reviews and try to do a good job for our audit clients and where I worked and all that kind of thing. But until I got to Cisco Syracuse in an operating environment, I'd never been in an operating environment. And all of a sudden, I'm like the number 3 guy in the company. It's a $150 million company that really wasn't doing very well, and it's in my hometown, in my home market. So all of a sudden I felt this, plus I'm kind of this guy who left corporate, who was on this rising path, who left, and I'm not really part of that anymore. I'm not on the radar, but I kind of know they're watching. And so all of a sudden I'm in this team, and I'm at that smaller table, but it's the table for Cisco Syracuse, and the competitive juices started flowing in a way that they'd never really flown for me, and I really, really liked it. And I really liked working with the leadership team we had there, which was small, the sales team, the operations team. And really my whole deal was, because I didn't know the business very well, I'm 40 years old, I never worked in an operating company, how do we work together? That was really it. And those years were tremendous years for me. But the opportunity to take that company, I was not the president of the company, but part of the team. We doubled the size of the company, we quadrupled the profits, and we built a bench. Right? That, I got great satisfaction from that, but that was all in the context of competing and improving, because we had a lot of improvement we need to do. And that's really all. You hear these coaches say it all the time. You know, they never answer a question. I got to look at the film. Win or lose, got to look at the film. Okay. What they're trying to say, other than not answer the question, is look, we competed. We either won or we lost. We got to get better. So keep getting better. Stretch and take risks. I touched on it a little bit already. Just get out of your comfort zone. Maybe a little bit earlier than what you want to. It can be as simple as, I'm an accounting major, undergrad. Maybe I should have taken more marketing courses. All right. If you're a finance major, take some ops courses. Whatever. Take a psychology course. Take 2 psychology courses. Those are my favorite courses. But stretch yourself and take the risk early. And then as you get older and more developed and more experienced and more clear on what you can do and where the opportunities are, then take the bigger risk, but take them smartly. Take them with some serious thought. I just wanted to get these next 2 words on a sheet of paper, so I put them together. I really think to get true purpose, to really feel good about what you're doing, to feel like you're making an impact, you need to be passionate about something. You need to be passionate, and the closer that can be to what you do for a living, what you can get someone to pay you to do, all right, pay you enough to live on or close, the passion, it really starts there. So try to find it, whether it's people or numbers or money or your faith or community service, whatever it is, find out what's important to you. It may evolve and change, but get to that early and get to it often. Try to get paid for it so you can do it for as long as you can. It may end up being an avocation over time. And then once you're there, be an effective advocate. Be an effective self-advocate. You have to be a strong self-advocate where you are today. Clearly you have that. We saw that with our children. Sometimes it's hard to be an effective self-advocate. Be a strong advocate for your ideas and your thoughts. There's a lot of people who are going to sit in a room and they're going to take up space, but they never really cross that line where they put themselves out there. So be an advocate, be an effective advocate. And then as we talked earlier, being an advocate for the people that maybe can't be an advocate for themselves. That will give you tremendous purpose and tremendous satisfaction. The last thing is leading with visions and values. And so I haven't talked a lot about Cisco. I haven't talked a lot about my CEO experience, but I left it for this. And really what I'm saying to you here is I've talked about my wife and my kids and my family and how big a part of that my life that has been. And how that's the ultimate and that's the big picture. But look, we work for a living. We do what we do because it's important and we want it to be important to other people. We want it to be important to our customers, to suppliers, to our investors and all that type of thing. I would tell you the opportunity to lead at any level is something I would encourage you to embrace. It's not about your business card. It's not about whether you're more of a subject matter expert, early in your career like I was. I was an accountant and a treasurer. Or I was not a leader of people. I wasn't reading, the Navy, or I wasn't leading large groups of people. But people are always watching you. So the opportunity to lead, we're at a point in this country, we're at a point in the world, we're at a point in this church. We need leaders. We need strong, passionate, thoughtful leaders that want to do the right things in the right way. So if there's one message you take from today, take your skills, find your passion, and go out and grow into a really strong, passionate leader. There's been a lot of books written on leadership. If you Google Lou Holtz, you'll see all kinds of quotes on leadership. I can't compete with that. But here's 3 things I would tell our people, and I think in my world, this works. To be a really effective leader in most environments, I think it starts with being really good at what you do. If you're sitting in a room with other people, or you're sitting in a locker room or on the field, and I saw this more in Cisco with salespeople and sales managers, whether it's the DSM who's the de facto leader or the sales associate in the back who's the leading producer, they're going to follow, the people are going to follow people who are already good. All right, they're good at what they do, and generally they're not just for their customers, but how they handle themselves on the inside of the company as well. So continue to refine your craft, be good at what you do. My world, my way of looking at it is to come at leadership from a team perspective. And what that means is there's going to be times to lead, you're at the front of the pack, and there's going to be times to be a support player. Think of it as a point guard if you have to use sports. But sometimes you're up front, sometimes you're just in the back, sometimes you're part of the team, but you're providing support, and it's about the team, and you define success in terms of the success of the team. If the team wins, the way we always thought about it, the way I always talked about it, if the customer wins in Cisco, all right, then the company's going to win. And by the company, it's the leadership team and it's the investors. The customer wins, company wins, and then the associate wins. That works if you're in the right environment, in the right culture, with the right people. So come at it from a team perspective. And then third, I've touched on this a couple times, is you need to want to make a difference. You need to really want to make an impact. And I can tell you, I've had the opportunity to work with some of the smartest, brightest people, nicest people in the world, but highest paid people, if not the world, in the country. But there's a lot of rooms that you go into, and people are just sitting there, and no one is putting it out there. No one is calling out the elephant in the room. No one is putting out that big idea that's maybe a little controversial and a little scary. That's the opportunity you have, but you got to believe, and you really got to have the guts and the courage and the resilience if it doesn't work to go forward and be that kind of leader. So for me, and I'm going a little long here, so I don't want to go too long on me. We can handle it in the Q&A. When I had that opportunity to come into Cisco as CEO, or to step up to that role, yes, I took the job, and yes, it was a very difficult macro environment, and we're in a very early stages of some very hard, necessary transformational change. It was tough, and it was a little bumpy in the first few years. But in terms of what did I do, it starts with your team. All right? It really starts with, especially a company that size, you can do the videos and you can go out and meet the people and all that, but I think in my time was in the 40,000 for the most part. That's a lot of people. There's only so many videos you can do. So you really have to have really good alignment with your team. Now, I learned early on, because I fumbled a little bit, there's a big difference between alignment, I wasn't in the military, I wish I had been, and consensus. All right, those are not the same thing. All right, so you pull your team together, we're all different leaders, and you try to get that input, and you try not to be the first one to talk and all that kind of thing. Do your 360s and get all the feedback. Let them all talk, all right, and try to steer the conversation where it needs to go. But at some point, you got to make a decision, and at some point you go. You got to make sure everybody's on board once you decide to go, whether it was their idea or not, or whether they agree. That is huge, especially the bigger the organization gets, because it's hard. You've got to keep everybody on the same page, keep them aligned. But you pick that team, and then you continue to improve that team, and that's what we did. But what I kind of landed on was this kind of the messaging. How do you get 45,000, 65,000 people to follow you? And you need a vision. It doesn't have to be this big, sexy vision, but it needs to be something people can understand and that's credible. So what we came up with, and I don't use the word I a lot, but what I came up with the help of a lot of people and a lot of airplane rides, was our vision statement. It's on the website. You can go back and look at their Investor Day. You'll see it in different presentations. It's a 10-word vision statement: to be our customers' most valued and trusted business partner. Why did I do that? Because I'd worked all around Cisco on all different levels, and we were not quite in sync. Okay, yes, the business was hard, but we'd fallen back a little bit and lost our way from our original foundings. So some people, it was all about sales, or it was all about transportation, or it was all about the broadline companies, or the meat companies, or Canada, or whatever, corporate, strategic initiatives. That's all good, but it's got to come together. But every now and then there's something that nobody can argue with. The biggest cynic in the world can't argue with. I found two in 30 years of working. One is safety for our people, safety for the community. And so we were able to put together some programs and made some good progress there. Still a lot of work to do. But the customer is the other. You create a customer-centric vision, basically. No one can argue with that. Why are you in business? Why do you want to be in business? There's only one reason to have a business, right? Is to find customers and do great things for them and retain those customers and grow the customers. Now, yeah, we need to take care of our associates, and we need to provide leadership opportunities, and we need to do the right things in the community, but it starts with those customers. So that was probably the biggest thing that I was able to do, and it really resonated. And it really gave people something to rally around when the times got kind of tough. So that vision, and to be able to articulate that in a way that people can get behind it, and it's not just some slogan on the bottom of everybody's email, but people actually talk about it, and you hear it in meetings. The other thing came a little later. I mean, Cisco is a company that's highly regarded. It's been highly regarded forever. Again, we're not perfect. But sometimes the values get a little murky, all right? So we kind of formalized our values a couple of years ago, and really, it's very simple. This is all on the website too. Integrity. I've got my own way of talking about this. You know, do what you say you're going to do, and after you say what you're going to do, don't promise to do something that you don't think you can do. Once you say you're going to do it, and conduct your business the right way. Inclusiveness. Certainly, we at Cisco have a big opportunity, and we're making good progress there. It's broader than diversity, but certainly diversity management is a big part of it. Create an environment that's open, respectful, and diverse, and continue to get better at that. That is how you're going to bring in the best people and create the most positive environment to do great things for your customers. Excellence. Marketing people didn't like the word excellence because they thought it was too broad and too many people use it. I like it a lot. Now, you can't just put it up there. You have to define what that means in your department or in your business. But what is excellence? It could be a level of improvement over some period of time. It could be a level of performance. It can be qualitative, but you need to define what that is to you and the people that work with you, and then how that fits into the bigger picture and the bigger goals of the company. Okay? Responsibility. How do we take personal and joint accountability for everything that we do? And now, I used to start meetings by saying in the tough times, look, this meeting is not about who we're going to blame when it goes wrong. Okay? This is about figuring out what we're going to do and giving it every opportunity to be successful. You take personal responsibility and joint responsibility. In a leadership position in big business, that's to your customers, to your shareholders, to your management team, to your suppliers, to your community, and a lot of other stakeholders. So embrace that responsibility. And then the last thing is what I've talked a lot about today, which is teamwork. To come at it as a team, to come at it as one. And so when that customer, however Cisco, when they're taking their order giving their order to Cisco, or they're having a bad day with the order that came in or didn't come in on time, we don't get into, well, I'm just the sales guy or corporate did it or whatever. We put our best foot forward every day on behalf of Cisco. And that best foot may just be the local salesperson. But we don't get in each other's way, and we don't confuse the customer with, well, I just do this, and they do that, but you got to call this 800 number to do this. All right? It's about the team coming together for the greater good for that customer base. So, love talking about it. The 9 years was an amazing experience. Probably what I feel best about. The success came hard. It came later than I would have liked. It took a long time for us to drive through a lot of the change that I haven't had the opportunity to talk about today. But I will tell you this, I think the market cap was about $13 billion when I got the job. It was a little over $30 billion when I stepped back from the job. And I'm proud to tell you it's approaching 40 on certain days today. And that's probably what I feel best about, which is we were able to make really good progress. My successor came in 5 years ago. That's used to be unheard of to come into Cisco and move up. His name's Tom Benet. He's continued to build that team, refine the team. Most of the team's still in place. Company's doing well. It's still a grind out there. And he was just named to be the next chairman of Cisco. So I couldn't feel better walking away from it now, knowing that I've done all that I can do to leave it in as good a place. And frankly, a little bit better than probably what I got it. So I hope that some of this is helpful. It's a story, but I think there's things that are applicable for you today and down the road. Maybe I'll get a chance to come back another time and talk about some other things. But in summary, I congratulate all of you on the success that you've had today. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Go out there and be the best possible people that you can be, and always remember, life is a lot bigger than any one job or any one career path. Thank you very much. So I said I would take any question, and I'll do my best to answer them. And I think we've got a fair amount of time left. So. And if you don't ask them, I've got 15 minutes. I'll just start asking or start talking again. So.
Are there any books that you would recommend that we read that you really liked, that were influential for you, or that taught you something brand new that you didn't know before?
Any books?
Yeah.
It's an interesting question, Aaron. Aaron and I were talking about that the other day. There's a lot of really good books out there on leadership. This is going to sound a little odd, given the school that this gentleman was affiliated with, but a lot of what we're talking about here is coaching, in terms of leadership. So I actually thought the book John Wooden wrote on coaching is a very easy book to read. It's about basketball, but it's bigger than that. So it's not, there's other books out there, and I can get back to you with a list, but if you just want to read something that's kind of easy and just kind of get you to focus on how to think about things that can be made overly complex, that was one that I read, several years ago, and that actually helped me quite a bit. Helped me prepare for talks like this, but actually helped me think about the business quite a bit.
So how did you formulate your long-term goals, and how did those change, and how did you adapt to that as something new happened in your life and each new job that you took?
I really couldn't hear the question. It's muffled.
Yeah, how did you formulate your long-term goals, and how did you change that and what you were deciding as you got a new job or new unexpected things happened?
Personally?
Yes.
Yeah, great question. I would say the way, as I got into my career, it evolved. So honestly, when I was sitting here as an undergrad, I just needed to get a job. Okay, and the big eight were the big eight in those days, and that was what I needed to do, and just get started. Then the business school, I knew that would so I think those first 10 years or so, how do you build a good foundation academically, experiences? One thing I would tell you, early in your career, it's unlikely early in your career, it happens, so I don't want to say it can't, but it's unlikely early in your career you're going to go out and run a big company or that you're going to run a big department. So one thing I would tell you is I would try to get some different experiences, ideally with the same company, but I think every company I went to work for, I thought I was going to be there. Well, it's funny, except for one. The one that didn't work out, I knew I wouldn't be there forever. So when that bell goes off, I would be a little careful before you go, because even though you're probably going to have some different jobs with different companies, I think it's important when you go in that you're really committed to what you're going there to do. But I think early on, it's important to get different experiences, and I would be very open to lateral moves that don't feel like a promotion. Lots of times people want money or they want a title, but early on, I build that base of experience, knowledge, relationships, and I would also be very open and interested in when there's a tough project out there and you can kind of see, you're smart enough to kind of see it's important, but it's a little risky, but no one's really volunteering. Especially early in your career, there's not a lot of downside. Go for that, all right? And that can be a huge inflection for you in terms of your career. On the broader part of your question, I would say, the reason I like the question is I've had this conversation with a lot of people. As I got into my career, I thought about I didn't think about my next job necessarily, but I kind of thought of what I wanted to be doing. I always thought about it, kind of in 12 to 18 month intervals. So I might have a 3-year, maybe early days when I thought 5 years, but 5 years is a lifetime, today. But I would always think in like 12 to 18 years out, or 12 to 18 months out. And certainly the annual reviews or the quarterly reviews are important. But I was never a person that kind of said, I need to be a vice president by such and such a date, or I need to be a senior vice president. And there's a lot of that out there, and that's just a big trap, I think. But I would say, I would be thinking in terms of where am I getting the experiences, am I providing the value I should be providing, and am I in a good place for the next 12 to 18 months? And then beyond that, is that taking me to a place where I can go to the next level or the next 3 to 5 years? And then, we'll see where life takes us. But I would go back to my earlier point also is you never know what opportunity is going to come when, and you need to be open-minded enough, if it's a good one, to maybe take a chance, and if it's a setback, to deal with it, and then kind of get back on track after that.
Hi, up here. So I'm in the MBA program. My name is Hardil. So my question is, you said success came later than you wanted it to be. So what were your learnings from that, and what can we learn from that so that we don't commit the mistakes that you think you might have committed?
I'm really having a hard time with the microphone.
Okay. Is it
better.
okay now?
Go ahead.
Okay. So you said success came later than when you wanted it to be. So what were your learnings? What can we learn from your experience and your mistakes that we don't commit them during our career?
What can be done to what?
What can be done in our career? What were your learnings from that? I'm asking because you said success came later
Yes.
than you wanted it to be. So what was your learning from that experience? What can we learn from that?
From my leadership
Yeah.
experience? I think what I'm trying to convey today is think of it as leverage, okay? Any finance majors in here? So there's operating leverage, there's financial leverage. I think, how do you leverage yourself? All right, so what I was trying to talk about in leadership is, and why it was so rewarding for me as I moved along into it gradually and then into the bigger job, frankly, maybe a little earlier than I was ready, but more ready than I would have ever been up to that point in time. It's how do you make an impact? How do you influence more? And you can stay in your own little space and you can be the greatest at what you do, and there's nothing wrong with that. Let me be totally clear with that. We need people like that. So you can be kind of an artist or a scientist or the world's greatest forensic accountant. Those are all great things to do. But what I was trying to articulate is, as I got pulled more into the team business side of it and the leadership part of it, what I found and the purpose side of it was, if I could articulate what my passions were and what my thoughts were, and if I could put together the right team that thought the way I did, or at least was aligned with what I was trying to do, if I could create the right message for our people, and if we could make sure reinforce a value system that we're all going to work under, then you can go out and you can leverage yourself and all those ideas across many, many more people and many, many more businesses or cities or whatever you're trying to do. So it's more about just leveraging your ideas and leveraging, and influencing people. I think the ability to influence people is an unbelievable skill and incredibly important if you're going to have success long term. There's I think a misnomer out there that the higher you go in an organization, become a CEO, you just sit there and just tell people what to do. And there may be some organizations that still work like that, but the command and control thing really doesn't work quite as well anymore. It's really more about, how can you use your skills, your knowledge, your experience to influence others to drive out a result that the organization wants. Is that responsive? Okay. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
So, you're on, a bunch of different questions. Well, one struck me, kind of like year or two back, kind of interesting, talking about this generation and how often they will change jobs.
Right.
I mean, I think it was less. The millennials was 9 times in their career on average. I think generations will come now.
I think it's alphanumeric now.
Probably 15 times for that. What are your thoughts as a senior leader today, seeing how industries are transforming and the generations are moving in, and you hear and see these things? What are your thoughts on frequency of changing, and what should be the defining factors? You mentioned a little bit earlier. For this generation, what should they be looking hard at trying to decide if it's time to move or not? And whether, sometimes things are motivated by, I just want to get from here, and their goals are not necessarily realistic.
Yeah. So did y'all hear the question? Is the mic working? Okay. So the frequency of change in jobs and really careers, right? I mean, the world is moving so fast, and my thoughts on that, and then maybe what's the catalyst or the inflection point to do that, or as we look out. I thought a lot about. That's really kind of why I talked more about purpose today, to be honest with you. I mean, that's not the only reason. So I think it's inevitable to some extent that you're all going to change jobs and to some extent change careers. But that's why I try to bring you back a little bit more personal here, which is I wouldn't get too hung up on what your expertise is today or what the first business that you work for or currently work for, what it is that they're going to, what their product is. I think you need to be aware of that if it's getting ready to be disrupted or obsolete or that kind of thing. But I think what's important is, so I think you should go in every job thinking that you may not be there forever, but you're going there for a definitive reason and you're going there to make a certain contribution. I personally think, and this is hard to do, because I'm going through this now with boards. How do you find a board? You can't really evaluate a board from the outside. You have to know people who are on the inside, and it's tough. Boards. There's a lot of big decisions get made in those boardrooms, and a lot of what I talked about today, in terms of making the right decisions and being strong and purposeful and all that. I would say, I think that first job is a very important job. You have great opportunity here with all the folks that come in here and interview. I think drilling down on what the company says they're about, not just their business, but their culture, their goals, their strategies, their, what they stand for, their values. And then to the extent that you can, kind of stress test that a little bit. All right, talk to other people that work in those companies. Stress test the strategy. Make sure you understand what they're trying to do as best you can, and what are their competitors doing. So I think to the extent that you can, that's why I thought, and I didn't think that like this time, but if you go back and look at my career, small town, St. Mary's of the Lake Church, Notre Dame, Ernst & Ernst, Cisco, I mean, these are all places that have high levels of integrity. Not perfect. They have their warts, like any family does. So I think you got to find out what is your value factor. What is it that you value, personally and professionally? What are your goals? And what are you trying to get out of that first job or the next job? But I do think, I think it's inevitable you're going to have more than one job in many instances or career. But I don't think you should have too many. I guess I think you should try, at least for me at work, try to align with an organization as much as you can. But this world's moving so fast and there's so much disruption out there. I would try to find an organization. This is me now. If I was starting over, I know there's a lot of attraction to go work for somebody who disrupts somebody else. I'm just going to tell you, I personally struggle with that a little bit. I get it, and it's the free marketplace, but I would personally rather work for an organization who's being disrupted, but has a long lineage, or at least a meaningful lineage of success and integrity and a sound strategy. So I would look at the people. I'd look at the reputation of the CEO, because that's going to be somewhat consistent with what you see. The strategy needs to be sound. But if you can get to what really is the culture of that company, I think that's really important.
I just want to clarify too. Job, you are going to change job, hopefully, quite frequently. But then I'm talking about more changing corporations or organizations. You're always going to change job. You're not. But I'm talking about shifting to different corporations.
One company to another. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I picked this week. I purposely came this weekend because I thought we'd have a big turnout because nobody has to go get ready for the football game. But again, I really appreciate everybody being here and the questions. And hopefully some of the message will be helpful to you as you go forward. Thank you.